What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Citizen Gaming Podcast. I'm Tim.
Hey, this is Josh.
And I'm Brenden.
This episode, we're going to talk about Fable, but first, we're going to, of course, get into some gaming news. As everybody kind of knows, November 11th, the Grand Theft Auto trilogy was released. I have played a little bit of San Andreas since it's on Game Pass. There's been some mentionings about how the resolution kind of sucked or the game's too dark. I did think that initially. I was able to adjust the resolution so it's not as dark for me, but I have heard that it has been pulled from the PC because it crashed the Rockstar launcher.
Yeah, it's been a real problem, especially on PC. Supposedly the console versions aren't quite as bad, but the PC version is apparently borderline non-functional.
Well, yeah, when I ran it yesterday on the Series X, and the resolution mode or graphical mode, I don't know, I just felt like it was that there's just atmospheric issues, things were dark and weird, but when I switched it to the performance mode with the 60 FPS, it cleared it up and it looked good.
It did. It was kind of cool to be, back in Los Santos from, back in the day and playing it. Brought back some old memories.
Yeah. Oh, shit, here we go again.
Yep.
I was like, okay.
I just can't wait to hear, damn it, CJ, all you had to do was follow the damn train. Or whatever Smoke says.
Yeah.
That classic line.
And, for other bits of gaming news, there's quite a few things, but I know the newer, smaller DLC updates that Valhalla gets. One of the recent ones that hit was Tombs of the Fallen. I haven't really played much of that small content for it just because it's very minimal and I have so many other things to play that require my attention at the moment. But that's a little bit of what is going on in the world of Assassin's Creed.
And since we talked about it before, the Marvel Avengers game has decided to remove the pay-to-win XP boosters from the game, which is good of them. Definitely a positive move listening to their community and correcting that, frankly, god-awful decision. Just really fucking dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice to see that they corrected their mistakes with, making it pay to win, and now they're kind of backpedaling and fixing the game.
Yeah. Hopefully they continue. And they announced their content roadmap for the next year.
Okay.
And so Sony's finally getting their Spider-Man exclusive character at the end of November. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, I never really played thoroughly through Avengers to really get a taste of that, pay to win content. But it's a decent game. My nephew loves it. So.
Yeah. And the last little bit of news, I think kind of some of the biggest news, if you will, is the release of Forza Horizon 5. Very much anticipated. I've got, quite a few hours into it already, and I'm absolutely enjoying it.
Yeah, I didn't play much of Forza Horizon 4, or the other ones, for a matter of fact. I haven't really, hit up the racing scene since, Midnight Club LA. But I have found a pretty intense addiction to Forza Horizon 5. It's pretty great so far, honestly.
Yeah, it really delivers, and it's set a high bar, and I think it was touted as Xbox games biggest original release or biggest original launch of, I believe it said, of all time.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy, and that sets a really high bar for Halo Infinite next month.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is also another Xbox exclusive.
Yeah, it's even being mentioned for a possible Game of the Year type stuff.
Forza Horizon.
Yeah, Forza Horizon 5.
It usually, same with Forza Horizon 4, it got talked about pretty highly when it came out, and I don't think it actually won any Game of the Years, but a lot of people put it fourth or fifth in like their game of the year because they just recognize how good the Forza Horizon games are.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know. Go ahead.
So they're definitely solid games. It's those are games that there is a lot in the series. I mean, the Forza Motorsports is up to 7. We're up to 5 now with Horizon, but they're not producing them and releasing them so much like the Madden or Call of Duty series, where they're not even updating anything. They're not even fixing anything. They just release them out to make their millions. They really spend time in these games.
The only issues that me and you experienced, Tim, because me and you have been playing it together more than not, is the online issues, which is a typical thing with when you're in each other's servers and you disappear from each other's view and reappear.
I think the server stability is probably going to be a little shaky for the first few weeks as they try to iron out the issues within the server. Definitely. And then the overpopulation of the game right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because
it's got some small growing pains.
Yes.
And if the worst thing is just some slight connection issues, I'd say they're in pretty good standing.
Yep.
Because it's way better than a lot of other games that launch.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's early access. It's VIP access. The week, the 4 or 5 days before the global launch.
4 days. Yep.
It hit like 1 to 2 million players.
Yeah, I saw. I think like 700,000 at one point, and then upwards of 1 million by the time the actual release date.
Well, the actual release it hit 3 million.
Well, yeah, but I mean like up to that point before.
Before
it went live.
Yeah.
And one thing that I was kind of excited about is Forza was able to keep their Toyota licensing because they had troubles with it in Forza Horizon 4, and they eventually got it, and then they were able to bring in Toyota vehicles. So it's nice that they were able to keep that relationship and keep those vehicles in.
And I think they didn't have Porsche originally either. They added a bunch of Porsche stuff after.
In Forza 4?
Yeah,
I don't remember, but you're probably right.
I can't remember. It's been years ago. I can't remember either, but I think they didn't have Porsches originally, and then they had a Porsche car pack that they put out.
Yeah.
So
and I know the what do you call it? I've never really been much for like add-on content wise for racing games, but I am tempted to give it a shot for sure.
It'll be interesting to see like what they do, because I didn't do any of the add-on content for Forza 4, Horizon 4. It didn't interest me because what was it, a Hot Wheels pack? So
the first one was Fortune Island, which took you to this separate island, and it had this whole like kind of treasure hunting aspect, and then also added normal stuff like races and new tracks and yada yada. And then so that's the first one. For Forza Horizon 5 is probably gonna be something along those lines, something a bit more standard and just kind of give us a new area to race around in and yada yada. But then if Forza Horizon 3 and 4 are any indication, the second one is going to be just batshit.
Yeah.
Because Forza Horizon 3, they added the Hot Wheels expansion,
That's what I was
and that thing was nuts. The thing was just crazy. And then Forza Horizon 4, they did Lego.
That's what it was.
It was like the Lego Speed Champions or whatever. Yeah. You got to drive around in a bunch of fun like Lego cars and stuff like that. And there was a whole like building your own mansion house thing in Lego. So odds are the second one is going to be some other kind of like crazy weird tie-in. That's just going to be like about goofy fun and having a good time.
Which would be fun.
That'd be neat.
Yeah. I mean, as Forza in general is definitely focusing more on the fun factor than anything else, but that usually that second DLC add-on really takes it to a whole other level.
And I know the what do you call it? I mean, it was Forza for me. I haven't really played a lot of racing simulator games, but I'm thoroughly enjoying figuring out the customizability of the cars more than I've been doing, like especially with the vinyl editor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
vinyl.
Vinyl editor has been pretty fun.
Yeah, no.
I know. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying, no, it's definitely a great game, and really looking forward to being able to play it some more.
Yeah, I mean, the last bit of news before we get into the main subject is Xbox's, anniversary is coming up. 20th anniversary, I think, on November 15th.
Yeah.
Monday.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, live stream's going to be going on, and a little bit of rumor that they might potentially drop Halo Infinite multiplayer that day. It's just a little rumor that I saw floating around, but that would be interesting.
I mean, that might be pushing it.
Might be pushing it, but
You never know.
it's
Crazier
just
things have
the
happened.
rumor verse, the rumors. May they ever be so humble.
All right, so if you guys don't have any more news, we'll dive right into today's episode.
You're
All right.
Yes, let's do it.
So, as I mentioned before, this episode is about the Fable series. It has been an Xbox exclusive game, with Fable 1 being released in 2004 on the original Xbox and PC, and then a year later they released the Fable Lost Chapters, again still on Xbox and PC.
and that was just the first game with they added a bit more story and a new area, um, just some extra content since the original did so well. So it's sort of like a director's cut, I guess.
Right.
Might be the best way to put that.
Yep.
Yeah, I unfortunately never played Fable, the original one, when it first released. I mean, it is now for me one of my second favorite titles I've ever played.
Yeah. It has a pretty decent story. We'll call the little boy that you follow, because he's an unnamed character
Hero.
that you follow, hero.
Well, yeah,
So
he's just called the hero.
I'm actually going to call him
Yeah.
Chicken Chaser, because in the game you actually get nicknames, and we'll kind of mention that here in a little bit. But your first nickname that you get is Chicken Chaser. So it's just a young boy. His village is raided by bandits. His family's killed. His sister's taken away. A hero slash like guild master, if you will, ends up rescuing him and trains him to become a hero. You spend essentially the rest of the game learning about kind of what took place in that village. You find your sister, who is now blind at this point, and you actually end up finding that your mom is still alive. And of course, you're battling some old heroes that have gone rogue throughout the years.
Yeah, well, because I know in Fable, the original Fable, what they would call the hero's bloodline that comes from like what the first civilization that came before was more common in most people during that time frame.
Yep. And the kind of the setting of it is about getting tongue tied here. Medieval time frame. About what is it? Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's medieval fantasy.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is just that to a T.
Yeah, it's a combination of medieval, like, with the additions of like revolutionary era.
Yeah, the later
muskets and
later games get into the Industrial Revolution
that's later on
and stuff.
The original one. Yeah, the original one was very much just
medieval,
straight medieval fantasy.
Oh yeah. I'm thinking of Fable 2 when they got like muskets and stuff.
No, this one you still fought
Fable
with
1 is
swords and bows, and then you used magic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those were your three options.
Yep. And then there was the alignment, which I thought was a really nice touch and feature, and I think that they did it fairly well for the most part, in my opinion. You essentially had two paths to choose. You could be good or you could be evil, and whatever path you decided affected your appearance and how the NPCs or the AI viewed you and how they reacted to you.
Yeah, I mean, what was nice is it wasn't so direct, like either left or right. It was you can actually play with both.
Right.
Do a little bit of bad and a little bit of good, and be in the in between.
Right. And please do correct me if I'm wrong here, but my only gripe, if you will, about the alignment is, so they have the alignment. You can choose the good path or the bad path, if you will. And as you're going down these paths, the story's still taking you in the same place. You're still doing the exact same missions or the same quests. Now you're just either on the good side or the bad side. I wish they would have kind of expanded and explored a little bit more the good path and the bad path, instead of taking you down kind of like a linear path. Yeah, you're good or you're bad, but you're still doing the exact same things. It's just depending on what
Yeah.
side of the coin you're on.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like it was their first attempt, Fable.
Right.
You know, being their first game, and
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't. I mean, I guess I didn't really see it that way. I mean, I, me and choice-based games. I'm always such
Mm-hmm.
the most common, good goody, doing
Right.
all the good stuff. Maybe might dabble in some bad stuff, but hardly ever. I just never have the heart to do that kind of stuff. I don't. I mean,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, it it never being good or evil in Fable, and this really applies to the whole series, doesn't change much.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Tim said, you're more or less doing the same things. It's just your immediate reaction to those things changes.
Right.
It's like
So
quick time events.
they not I mean not necessarily like that. It's just they don't really have any long lasting consequences.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, makes sense.
Like it's very much in the moment, like are you good or bad or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean you could technically play the middle, but that's you don't get anything for it, so it's basically pointless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's better just to swing hard one way or the other.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, like it has those choices, but they just don't have a lot of consequence, and that
Right.
that applies to the whole series really.
Right.
Is one of it failed to evolve past that.
Yeah.
Um, but that doesn't make it less fun
No.
or like
Mm-hmm.
less entertaining or anything like that. But it was definitely one of the things that eventually led to its uh, meddling and
Yeah.
meandering and not really changing with the times.
Like I said, that's like my biggest gripe, if you will. And even then, like that right there was absolutely not a deal breaker for me with that game. I'd play that game again if it was remastered. That's just a small, tiny little detail of the game. And you're thinking, all right, let's go back to 2004. Games were confined to discs back then, so trying to expand off of something where they only had what 10 to 15 gigabytes of hard drive, or not really hard drive, but like space that they can work with. Kind of understand like how it would be hard for them to kind of take separate paths.
Yeah.
Well,
And
yeah,
the later
I mean,
ones, they could have definitely, as technology had kind of grown to Fable 2, Fable 3, and now we're going into Fable 4, which we'll get to later. They definitely could have expanded on it a little bit more.
Absolutely. Yeah.
well, it's. I mean, part of it was definitely technology, and
Yep.
a lot of those choice-based RPGs were really a pretty new thing at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, there are obviously games beforehand that did it,
Yep.
and games that had consequences and yada yada, but um, not quite. A lot of those were not as action oriented as Fable
Right.
was. Because Fable does have, as simple as it is, it does have a combat system where you are in control,
Yep.
um, and deciding your actions and yada 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 with simple button inputs instead of
Mm-hmm.
it being like
Mm-hmm.
a bit more tactical, strategy based. It is definitely more action focused,
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
which is
I
fairly
mean,
new for the time.
the art and character creation scheme and of that game was just in my opinion kind of like imprinted hard on me. Just the goofiness of it. It was
Yeah.
it was just so comical and addicting, really.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean the chicken chaser thing, like you mentioned, Tim.
Yes.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah, the original point was for it to be a bit more lighthearted and fun
Yes.
and goofy. I mean, the original pitch, from what I remember, was it was kind of supposed to be like a Monty Python RPG.
Okay.
Like it was supposed to be this kind of dry British humor that permeates through the game. And not that it can't have a serious narrative, because
Right.
it does,
Right.
but just like an overall lightheartedness and goofier tone to just help separate it, because a lot of games at the time were very dark and serious,
Mm-hmm.
and not that there's anything wrong with that, but in order to help Fable stand out, they decided to go in a different direction.
Yeah.
And I mean, they definitely succeeded on that point because, again, there wasn't a whole lot like it at the time.
Yeah.
No.
Which is one of the most special things about it, for sure.
Yes. What's one of the things that I really liked about the game is the NPCs, and I can't think of any games even up to this day that kind of mimic or do the same thing as Fable did. Is the NPCs react to how your character looks, and it might be a subtle reaction, it might be a pretty heavy reaction. If you're good or you're evil, if you're good, you're going to have a halo above your head. Your skin's going to be kind of paler. You're going to look like a normal human. If you've chosen the evil path, your skin turns like gray and you have horns coming out of your head. So the NPCs seeing you, they're going to react to you that way. Also, the clothes that you choose to wear, if you have tattoos, that also affects like how they kind of perceive you. I believe your physique, if you eat too much food, I believe you put on fat, and they kind of perceive you negatively there too.
I think that was Fable 2. I think Fable 1 didn't have the fat thing, did it?
I know
I don't remember Fable 1 specifically having that.
I remember that the food affected you. I know what
it was Fable 2. In Fable 2, the food definitely affected you. It was Fable 2 that they introduced like the weight gaining system.
Yeah.
And I don't think Fable 1 had that. I mean, Fable 1 I think was very bare bones. Obviously, it had the reaction system from the NPC civilians with just your emotes. I believe you had emotes and
you had emotes.
And just your outfits, because that's where it kind of all started. Is where they had that build of that, which was unique because, I mean, it was another comical thing, especially to go into town and people be like reacting to you, and you'd be like, you wouldn't even think what you put on was like kind of like ugly or something. And NPCs would be like, and you'd be like, wait, what? Yeah.
And then kind of like as I mentioned at the beginning when we first started talking about Fable so I called him kind of Chicken Chaser. It was little nicknames that you could purchase. You default with Chicken Chaser. I don't remember what all of them were, but that's what the NPCs would address you as, or at least that's what they would call you. Like, oh, hey, there goes Chicken Chaser. It was.
Yeah.
I thought it was a cool, neat little addition that they added, especially since you had an unnamed hero.
Yeah, it was an unnamed hero. He didn't have a voice. I mean, it was.
Yeah, they had a lot of those different titles that were, I mean, again, range from goofy like Chicken Chaser, to like more serious ones like Hero of the Ages or some other stuff like that.
Yep.
And I mean, it also added a bit more customization to it, just because you could work your way to that title and then just use it for the rest of the game.
Yep.
So that way you could be I I know I played through at least the game once entirely as Chicken Chaser just for shits and giggles.
Right. Yeah.
So like the entire game is me being Chicken Chaser.
It's
so even in the end game, people are like shouting my name as Chicken Chaser when I'm like saving them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was
it's pretty great. Yeah.
Was it that one that you could kick the chickens that were kind of running around?
Well, yeah, that's how you get that title.
Was it? Is that how you got? I thought it defaulted to Chicken Chaser.
No,
I don't think so. I think you start out as like rookie or recruit, because you get into the Heroes Guild and that's what they call you.
Yeah, I think.
And then you have to beat the chicken kicking mini game that's in Fable.
Oh, okay,
you have
that's
to like
what it was.
Kick chickens to get points, and you have to get a certain amount of points, and then you earn the title of Chicken Chaser.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, because that was it's they added the addition of gaining your nicknames through acts or little things you would do in the game. Specifically, I don't know if there was any others you can gain due to certain things, but I like you said, Brenden, I think Chicken Chaser was the one you for sure got from kicking chickens.
Yep.
I mean, there were other ones. I just don't remember what they are off the top of my head.
It's been so long.
There was a lot of them.
Yeah, there's a lot, and I haven't played it in forever.
Yep.
So I mean, I'm not gonna remember that.
Me and you tried to play it, Josh, back in 2019. because it's on Game Pass. You can play it right now, but it like kind of takes you back to the Xbox 360, and it was rough, especially since like
Oh yeah, it is rough. I
yeah.
mean, the best part about that series though for me, for like, especially what do you call it, older titles, past generation titles, is
Yep.
just the goofiness of the creation and the art, the art, kind of like essentially the artwork of the world and how
Yep.
they built it. It
Yep.
holds up decently well. You can totally tell it's dated with its controls and some of the visuals, but its goofiness kind of that's what makes it special. At least to me, is I feel like
Well,
you can just go back into it and just
yeah.
kind of makes you overlook its dated issues.
It was never a game, at least in my opinion, was never made to be like the prettiest game. It wasn't supposed to represent real life. It was,
No.
like you said, kind of that cartoon, kind of over the top, if you will. That was what kind of made that game so special.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, it was made to look pretty, and it
Yes.
isn't super cartoony.
No.
I mean, there's definitely some ways, and like the way some of the buildings are,
Yep.
and some of the, I mean, especially in some of the character designs and stuff, is
It's just
very
goofiness.
animated and is very exaggerated.
Yes.
Yeah.
There we go.
But it's not like it's not like it's cell shaded. It's not like it's supposed to look like a cartoon or a comic book.
Yeah.
It just feels kind of like, I mean, if anything, yeah, probably an exaggeration of real life people. So just kind of pushing things a bit over the top just to be funny.
It was it was more so kind of like if Popeye had the human race looked like Popeye essentially.
Yeah, I guess I could see
and
that.
and just the character builds of
Right.
how they looked.
And then kind of the other thing that I really liked, and I think it was unique to these games, and I want to say all three did it, all three titles: Fable 1, Fable 2, Fable 3. What it was is your character would age, and I can't think of any games to this day that do that aging system and actually do it as well as they did it. So as the story progressed and as time went on, your character got older. So at one point, you're an old man. You don't stay the same age. You don't stay looking the same way through the entire gameplay.
Yeah, that was subtle though. Not a lot
was.
of I don't think a lot of people noticed that. I mean, I more so noticed it in Fable 2. You could see the age on his face a little bit.
Yeah.
There's hard time jumps. Like you start out in Fable 1 as a kid.
Yeah.
Then eventually you start out and you're like in the hero skill a little later on and you're like a teenager.
Right.
And then you grow to be an adult. I think Fable 1 stops at the adult part.
I thought you grew to be an old man in that one, or is it Fable 2 that I'm thinking of?
It's Fable 2 that you see
Fable
some
2.
aging.
Okay.
And then Fable 2 is sort of the same. Again, you start out as a kid, go into like teenager 20s, and then there's
That huge time
a little
gap.
later on, there's a huge time jump. And then the same thing, I think with Fable 3, it does the same thing. I mean, but it helps you set up, and it even helps you get a bit more attached to your character,
Yeah, character
because you
growth.
play through their whole life, or at least some of the most important parts of their life.
Yep.
Instead of just starting out straight as an adult and being a hero and having all these crazy powers and whatnot.
Well,
Yeah.
it's nice that they integrated, like, so growing up as a child, you're learning the mechanics and the movements of the game as you're a kid, and then as you get to the Heroes Guild and you kind of transition into that teenager role, that's when you start learning like the fighting of the game, and then as you go to adult, you learn like how to navigate the game and do the quests and things like that, and
master your powers. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, see, that's the biggest thing for me, I guess, with story character arc games that you would potentially get connected to the character, is having that personal ability where you kind of like accompany your character on his journey through life.
Yep.
Not a lot of games do that. A lot of games are more straightforward, but it's a wonderful, corny way to say it, but it's a great experience.
It was.
Especially those games. Fable 1 for sure.
Yep. And then kind of transitioning over to Fable 2.
Did we mention the remaster, the anniversary edition?
I kind of mentioned it at the beginning, if I remember correctly.
Not to like say we
before,
should stay with it too much, but I mean, did you guys mess with anniversary edition at all?
I did not.
Yeah, I played and finished it. It's
It
just the
ironic.
Fable Lost Chapters with better graphics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it ironically was the first time I ever played the first Fable. Because I mean, what they did enhancements with, just resolution, bumped it to 1080p, added in some additional content, like when it comes to cosmetics and just a little here and there, and they cleaned up the movement, I believe, a little bit. But that was the first time I
They
did Fable.
smoothed a lot of it over, but it was at its core still fundamentally Fable the Lost Chapters.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
No, I never played the anniversary, but yeah, it is similar to the other ones. I actually when I started playing Fable. It was when the Lost Chapters came out, so I initially got that extra content.
Yeah.
When I first played the game.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we'll kind of transition over to Fable 2. There was a game that came out later, Fable Pub Games, that kind of built that transition, I guess you will, or if it takes place before Fable 2, right, Brenden?
Yeah. It's supposed to be. I thought it came out slightly before. Yeah, it came out slightly before Fable 2.
Okay.
Not by much, but just a little bit. And the whole point was it was these little, like card and tabletop type games that you could play to win money, and then when all that money that you earn, you could transfer over to Fable 2 proper, so you could start your character off with a bunch of free money that you had earned.
Right. Which is
kind
of a nice little addition, like a little pregame to the game, if you will.
Yeah. I mean,
it had like 3 or 4 different games that you could play. All of them were like original, more or less. It wasn't like standard stuff. It was stuff they made up to fit into the Fable universe.
Right. And then Fable 2, which was released in 2008, was also still, because it's an Xbox exclusive, was released for the 360.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it came out in 2008 of October.
Yep, October 2008.
It took 500. It took place 500 years after the events of Fable 1. After your hero, the hero of Oakvale, so they call him, defeated Jack, which is the main villain in Fable 1.
Yep. This takes place 500. This starts to transition into that Industrial Revolution, right?
No.
Or no, early modern period. That's where it went.
It kind of gets into like the period of like pirate-ish type stuff and muskets and
like 1700s.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
To equate it to the real world.
I mean, you start out as an unknown hero again, obviously, with a sister, and you live in the slums of Bowerstone Old Town, and because Fable 2 was the first time I ever played the Fable series, actually, and those that beginning scene stuff, playing as a little kid and marching through the streets with your sister and getting introduced to some of the little comical stuff, especially when you run into that salesman. Oh, I don't know what his name is, but it was a cool experience, the beginning of that game, because it was mystical.
Yeah. In this game,
in a pretty funny way.
In this game, to show progression of the game, they actually built the cities up at this point. The cities are a lot bigger than they were in the previous title, Fable 1.
Yeah, there was a scope to them.
Yep.
Yeah, because I mean, as that kid, those buildings were huge.
Yeah.
As you're waltzing around the streets.
Yep. And so, the story's, kind of reading up on it right now. It not necessarily mirrors Fable 1, but you do start as a kid. This was the first one where you could be a boy or a girl, right?
Yeah. Right? No. Yeah.
Because they introduced genders in this
I think
one.
so.
Gender.
I think you
Yeah.
might be
That
right.
it might be right because because you start up
I just can't remember if they did in the first
that
one or not.
No,
that
the first one you were
iconic
a
startup
boy.
screen. Because it was that iconic startup screen where they really added in
Yep.
some the fableistic just fantasy
Yep.
music and stuff, and then you get to choose if you want to be a boy or a girl. I mean,
Hmm.
you're always going to have a sister no matter if you choose to be a boy or a girl.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
that doesn't affect it at all.
that doesn't change. Yeah. Um, oh gosh, and then what do you call it? There wasn't. Your sister did have a nickname for you. I just forget what it was.
Sparrow.
Yeah, Little Sparrow. Little
Yep.
Sparrow. Yeah,
Yep.
that's what she called you. That was the first nickname before you gained like Chicken Chaser, because I believe you can gain Chicken Chaser like we were talking about in the first one by actually just kicking quite a few chickens in that beginning scenes as a kid, because there are chickens roaming around the
Yeah.
streets.
And then that's actually when you get the dog too. It's kind of when you're that little boy and you and the
Yeah.
dog grow up together.
Yeah, because when you first meet the dog, I believe he's getting abused by one of the bullies of
Mhm.
that run the streets down there. Some
Yep.
little kid who's probably slightly older than you, and you stumble upon him beating on the dog, and then you get to pull out your little toy sword and crack him in the noggin a few times, and
Yep.
gets that little iconic like, "Oh, you little nut," like, it's that game though. It was hilarious.
Yes.
And that's how you get your dog. I mean, I think what do you call it? Through a lot of games I played, I never experienced a system in a game where you had a dog companion like that.
I mean, there had been games beforehand. Uh, Dead to Rights was. I mean, that was the entire point of that game.
yeah.
It's basically Max Payne with a dog.
Oh yeah, okay.
Um,
Never played that.
There's
I mean, it was okay,
there are games that
but
have
I mean, yeah, it's definitely something unique.
yes.
Yeah,
And the dog
and
was really helpful because it would sniff out treasure for you. It would attack, help you fight, and the dog could never be killed.
yeah. Thankfully, gosh, wouldn't that be terrible? I mean, because right away, even as a kid, when you first stumble upon the dog, I mean, right away they start introducing you with those evil and good choices.
Yep.
Right off the bat. Um, but yeah, like what with the events happening, you go through some pretty horrific events, and time jumps like we were talking about, and
Yep.
you're a young. I would say you're about a teenager, young adult, and that's when you have your dog that you saved when you were a kid, and that's when you really get, like you were saying, Tim, is finding treasures, because right when you leave your little safe area, which is what the a gypsy village or something like that, gypsy camp.
Yeah.
That's right when you get out those doors, your dog starts sniffing around and treasure here, treasure there, which was the cool one, absolutely cool addition. Because I mean, if you were pretty thorough about it, not a lot of people are thorough gamers. I mean, because I definitely wasn't at first. You could find a lot of hidden gems right
Yes.
away with the dog.
Yep. And then with Fable 2, they kept the alignment, good and evil, purity or corruption. It was kind of the same plane, if you will, for Fable 2 as they had with Fable 1.
Yeah.
Your choices affected your good and evil and how the NPCs perceived you. Also, the food that you ate also kind of determined what
Your weight.
and if you were good or evil. Eating meat, you would get evil points or bad points because animals were harmed to make that meat. Whereas if you ate like celery and stuff like that,
Yeah, it was actually the like that you are on to it.
yeah,
But I don't think it was meat specifically. You could eat little chicks, like baby chicks, and
you
you would eat them in front of people, and people would be so disgusted,
yeah,
and they would have those little hate signs above their head.
right,
So that was that. I think that was the addition you were talking about, where like you could eat some stuff that could affect your fame when it
Right.
comes to like good or bad. And I know one of the most epic good or bad things that I experienced was there was this temple in the game where you could specifically like do human sacrifices, which sounds absolutely terrible. But you could sacrifice like one of the main ones was you can, get married in Fable, obviously.
Yep.
You could have countless numbers of wives, if depending on what kind of type of person you wanted to be.
Yeah.
But you could take them because you could at that point. I mean, that was the only game I played. You can have people follow you.
Yeah.
So you can like, hey, follow me, and you take them across the map, and you could do that with your wife, and you take her to this place and sacrifice her on this altar. And I couldn't believe that stuff was like. I was like, well,
So
I mean, yeah, you could do that with anyone who would follow you.
yeah,
Because that was part of your reputation system and your hero level and whatnot is getting the ability to
Yep.
command people,
Yep.
and
yeah,
get followers and stuff.
So
yeah. That was a shocker.
I don't remember the story too much, and kind of trying to read a quick synopsis on it. It seems like it's similar, not the exact same, not a carbon copy of
No,
Fable
it
1.
was.
But they definitely added more depth to this game as far as what you can do. So like you said, you have a wife. You could have multiple wives. You could have sex with her, and if you had unprotected sex, you could have an STD, or you could have children, or both.
The
potentially.
STD counters.
You could purchase or find a condom, and you could have sex. No repercussions there.
Yeah.
There was jobs.
I mean, on that,
Yeah.
I mean, it's the only game I've ever known to have a stat tracker of how many STDs you've contracted. It was the most hilarious thing.
Yep.
And I mean, I can't remember how many I contracted, but I tell you what, if, the future Fable game that's, been rumored, if it doesn't have something like that, I tell you what.
I mean, that was there just to play into the humor,
Yeah.
and, like
Yeah.
the
I mean,
childish adolescent side of the humor. of
even
just like,
so.
haha, I have STDs.
yeah, it was pretty funny. I mean, like what you had the hilarity of, you could have two different wives live in the same town, and they would stumble upon each other, and one of them would end up leaving you.
Yep.
And take your kids with her, and yeah.
And then
You could get married in Fable 1, but
Yes.
like the sex and the STDs and stuff, that was all
you were kind of
in
just
Fable 2.
limited to having a wife.
It was very much like you. I think you could still have multiple wives, but
Mhm.
you were very much limited to, like, you are my wife, and that was kind of like the end of it. There
Right.
wasn't any additional things to the relationship, like you couldn't have kids or
Right.
have sex with them or what have you.
Well, and then like Fable 2, they dove into it a little bit more. So yeah, you could have kids, you could have a wife. If you so chose to go this route, you could do same-sex marriage. There was divorce. You could become widowed. Your kids could unfortunately die, or they would even run away, and then to try and become an adventurer like you, and then you'd have to go and rescue them and save them.
Yeah, it was the first time I remember that because I think it's when they get to that age you were when you were a child at the beginning of the game is where they get like adventurous, and you'll come back from a mission to your to where you possibly have a house purchased or established, and your wife or your wife would be like, hey, so and so ran off, and you'd be like, oh heck, all right.
And then
I mean, on that child front though, the most unbelievable hilarious thing when I was playing it happened was, I'd beaten the game, this and that, and, just grinding it out, doing so many random things. And I remember, my wife in the game was the old mayor of Bowerstone. So it's a quest line. You could get her resurrected and stuff and marry her. But I remember I came back from a mission because as you're out on doing your quests, time passes in real time.
Right.
And you come back to where you live, and your baby that you had will be grown up into a kid. And I remember the first time I saw my kid, he was a colored boy with orange hair. Oh. And I'm like, I'm a white male with blonde hair. And I'm like, well, okay. So was that a glitch, or is there something else going on here?
That's funny.
Which it was hilarious. I about died.
Yeah. And so it was actually kind of interesting is in Fable 2, you didn't make money through quests. You made money by doing side jobs, blacksmith, woodcutter, bartender, assassin. And that's how you made your money, and that's how you made your fortune, and that's how you would elevate your character.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't, because the Heroes Guild doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Because that was how the first game worked: is you joined the Heroes Guild and you would get paid for doing these quests. But since that doesn't exist anymore, they had to find a new way for you to earn money.
Yeah.
And that is typically the best way is jobs, and then
Mm-hmm.
the obvious RPG stuff of killing people, taking their loot, and going to sell it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that money earning system. It was the first time I experienced the ability to earn money while not playing the game. How you would, stop playing the game and go on to some other game that you were trying to play, and you come back to play, and then you would have an accumulation of money that had been building up over time while you were gone.
Which leads me into my next point. Is so like you buy property, and I remember reading somewhere, any property that had an interior was a piece of property that you could buy. And then if you bought so many pieces of property, you became the mayor. If you bought, even more, if you bought like an entire town, you would become the king or queen. And then if you bought like all the properties in the game, you became like the emperor.
Yeah, I know, because like you were saying, is I believe property, like the amount of property you would purchase would give you access to new titles that the civilians would call you, like mayor, and like eventually the big purchase, the final purchase of the game that you were obviously what was causing you to buy all these establishments, rent them out, businesses, whatnot, to accumulate that money was to purchase the castle in Bowerstone. And that's when you gained the title of king.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then with these properties, you could actually furnish them as well. So you weren't strictly limited to buying them. You could buy stores, and you would get rent. And that's what you're talking about, Josh, is the rent would accumulate every 5 minutes, even when the system is turned off.
Yeah, well, because like with the store properties, the bookstore, the blacksmith, the pub, the little street vendors, you could purchase all those, and those are strictly, money earning on a money earning base. And when you would obviously there's, tons of houses you could purchase, and you could, have it to where you can live in them all, but you could also rent them out for a profit as well.
And then you could also set prices and set the rent. And that would also have an impact on your corrupt / purity as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, your alignment.
Yeah, because every time you would get paid, so depending on what you set your rent at, because there was a percentage mark, there was like, the 0%, which is even. You can lower the prices below that to the negative to make things affordable, or you can just skyrocket them. And every time you would get the time frame in the game passed, which is I think the 9-day cycle, you would get your income from all those properties. And when that hit, let's say you were sitting in Bowerstone, as that money hit your account and it's like, oh hey, you just got paid, everybody in the town would, if it was high rent, their evil hate messages would just appear above their heads, and it was the most hilarious thing.
And then in this one, they actually brought in co-op play, which they didn't have in Fable 1.
Oh, yep.
Right,
yeah.
But you had to play it as like a preset. You couldn't bring your own character in. You were kind of like the henchman to whoever you're playing with. So if I was playing with you, Josh, or even you, Brenden, I'd be a henchman, and I would do your quests, but they wouldn't have any impact on my game.
No, so that was actually the most hilarious part.
Yep.
Is you could join someone's game as that preset character you chose, as a preset character you chose, and you could go run amok in your friend's game and get him bad notoriety.
Yep.
And you being a asshole like that. So that was actually unique. Plus, with that co-op system, the only kind of thing that was kind of crappy about it was you were locked into a set frame distance, so you could not leave the
you were
distance of that guy, of your friend. So your friend's character, you couldn't get out of frame away from him.
The henchmen as they're kind of calling what you were, you couldn't buy property or gamble, and you couldn't accept quests for them.
No.
Yeah, you're basically just there as an extra fighting hand.
Yeah.
Which
That's really all you did.
this was kind of around the time when Xbox Live really started kind of to pick up. So you didn't have to be, playing on one console, which was an option, but you did get to play through Xbox Live.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, on that note, I mean, the first time I started playing it was, I remember like Brenden when I was playing it, and Tim when we were all playing it. You're gonna recall this.
Yep.
Is when you're in your own game, running around your world, you saw the character orb of all your friends you were with, friends with on Xbox Live. And you would see their little gamer profile and a little orb floating around, and that's where they are in real time in their game while you're playing in your game.
Yep. And then,
which is the coolest thing.
During the remaster episode that we just did, you had talked about the doors.
The demon doors.
The demon doors.
That was the coolest thing.
I still can't. I even tried looking it up since we did the remaster episode. I can't remember what those did. Did they just talk shit to you?
They they were just a comical addition. So they essentially, like, the coolest thing I thought about them is you would stumble upon them and they would look like just a normal, just huge, cement rockish door. And as you got into a certain distance of it, it would like come alive and extend out of it, and you were just like, holy shit. And it would each demon door. I mean, Brenden, a little bit more, but each demon door had like set tasks. They would give you some comical tasks that you need to complete to get inside them to get the treasure that lied behind them.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, they would each have some qualification for you to open them. And it was set every time. I think there's 15 or 20, something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, like some of it was, it was usually just random stuff. Some of it was goofier, some of it was a bit less goofy. Like some of it was like, oh, you just need to max out your alignment one way or the other, and then he'd open the door for you.
Yeah, one would be, I remember one was towards like, hey, do this emote in front of me, or wear mutton chops, the facial hair.
Or you have to look a certain way, show up, in like a dress or some stuff like that. Right. But what was behind them always, I mean, again, it was set what was behind the door, but sometimes it was just treasure. Sometimes there was like little secret worlds behind them, like little different areas that were different.
Yeah.
And I think behind a couple of them there was, I know behind one that there was like a house and a piece of property that you could get, and the whole point was that it was this little idyllic getaway area.
Oh, I remember that one. Yep. It was like a little farm, wasn't it?
It was like a mystical, like, other realm that you would go into, and it was very pretty. And you would just go in there, and that was a surprising addition. I had no idea something like that would be a thing.
So I want to back up just a quick second and actually go back to the dog and character alignment. So your character alignment affects how you're perceived by NPCs. It affects how you look, right? Your dog also, because he's your companion. His, what he would look like would change also, depending on like how you chose. Your dog would be golden if you were good, and then black if you were bad. And actually, in the future, or when later down the road, there was downloadable content. One called See the Future, and you could actually change the breed of your dog.
Yeah. I mean, it was neat because even your dog had a fear system. Like, your dog could love you or fear you. And it depended on how you treated your dog, because you could be mean to it. You could play fetch, and you could, pet your dog, and it would give him, it acted like an NPC. It would give him, like, those, like, I love you points type thing.
You could also teach your dog tricks, which is also something kind of cool.
Yeah.
Another little interesting fact about the game is there were no other animals in the game save for rabbits and birds. So, like, you had carriages but no horses.
Oh, you're right. Gosh, I never noticed that.
Yeah, I'm reading it right here, and it was like, wow.
Oh, man.
That completely went past me back in 2008 when I played the game.
What's funny is, like, it's like with all the games now adding, like, just so much real life into them. Like, like that never dawned on you. Like, hey, where are the horses? Oh, hey, where's this animal? Yeah.
Well, because like you didn't see the carriages moving around; they were like generally in towns, stationary.
Yeah, the only characters you saw while you were on the road was the traveling vendors that wear those huge backpacks.
Yep.
The guards, the Albion Guards, were littered throughout the wildlands of the game.
Yes.
Bandits, goblins, and then in like Wraith Marsh, which was a terrible place, place of death and just destruction, and which was actually the original town and area you walked around and did things in the first Fable, which was Oakvale, I believe. But yeah,
what's left of Oakvale.
Yeah.
And then something else that they kind of added into this one, which I don't think that they really had in Fable 1, is interactive cutscenes. So you could use expressions during the dialogue. You could run away, thus you'd skip it, but if you wanted to continue that mission or that quest, you go back to it, and then it kind of picks up again from where you ran away from.
Yeah. I mean, like, mentioning, like how I mentioned with its, its callbacks to the first Fable, I never knew or played Fable 1 to know what to look for while playing the game, and it took one of my cousins to play it to notice that they essentially took like most of like the landscape of Fable 1 and some key things you walked by or did a mission in the area of, and they added it into that map to show like the evolution of everything and the time frame, and you would see the ruins of something essentially, and you'd be like, oh, that's the what, the so and so. But I never knew that because I never played Fable 1 to see those.
That was the whole point, was to take, because only, I mean, you don't go everywhere that you go to in Fable 1.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of the areas get treaded over again because it's been 500 years. So like like we already talked about with Wraith Marsh, it's just Oakvale that's been destroyed. And there's a few other areas like that too, where it's changed and evolved over 500 years, and that was a good way to establish that, and make a nod to Fable 1 to people who played it, so that you can be like, oh man, look at that, I recognize that from the first game.
Right.
Yeah.
But it also helps establish that time frame of where you're at, and that like you're still in Albion, you're still in that same country, continent. You haven't they didn't just start all over in some other place,
right?
Just to set a new area.
Yeah, but it was nice that they developed the world, connection, if you will, along with the changing of time.
Yeah, I mean, because the first time you experienced the callback to Fable 1, which I didn't know of, was after you leave Gypsy Camp and you learn that you have heroes DNA, and you go down into which is the Tomb of the Heroes or something like that, which was the original I think
it's the original Heroes Guild.
Yeah, the original Heroes Guild, and it's hidden beneath a mountain, I believe. The ruins of what it was. The old guild, and
they just built on top of it.
Yeah.
And then kind of transitioned again to Fable 3, which is not the last title, but the latest. I don't know. Fable 3's...
It's the last mainline.
It's the last time that was anything sort of like the old.
Still released on Xbox 360. This one did come out for Microsoft Windows. I didn't see anything about Fable 2 coming out for Windows, but I imagine it did. It was released in 2010. All these, which I forgot to mention earlier, was developed by Lionhead Studios, published by Microsoft Game Studios.
Yeah.
I don't...
Yeah, see, with the Fable 3 franchise, I mean, it was, I don't know how far, ahead it was set to the events of
50
Fable.
Years.
It was 50 years.
Because
I remember as you started, your hero in Fable 2 is your character's father.
Right.
So yeah, that Fable 3 for me, especially with, it had its callbacks, just like Fable 2 did when I learned about them, and it was nice and cool.
Yeah.
I was excited to play it, but
I was, if I remember right, I was kind of disappointed because I can't even find where they talk about it. Is I want to say they took out a lot from Fable 2 that a lot of things that Fable 2 had is not in Fable 3 when this was released.
They really did. I mean, there was a lot of additions, but I felt like it was missing a lot of the charm when it came to like some customizability. I mean, they added like the coolest thing they added into Fable 3 was your sword. Your weapons would evolve with your choices. So essentially you would have this sword, and depending on its deeds and what you killed with it, it would evolve and transform into a mighty known weapon that your NPCs in the game would be like, oh, that's, it was neat. That was a cool addition. And like you said, a lot of the missing things that, there was just a lot of cosmetic things that they took out that were, I guess could have been pointless to some people, but that I felt like the cosmetic side to like clothing and just the hilarity of things was very dry. Yeah.
They did leave.
I mean, that's
Go ahead, Brenden.
That's more of a personal thing.
Yeah.
Of whether or not the cosmetics, worked or didn't work for you. I think a big part of where Fable 3 went, I won't say wrong, because like it was still fine. Like it was still a good game, but it it teased one of its biggest plot points before the game even came out.
Right.
And so like we all knew where the story was heading before it even happened.
Yeah.
And then they made that part out to sound like it was a huge deal of the game. Like this is going to be super important. You're going to be spending a lot of time doing this. Da 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 da. And then it ended up not being that big of a deal.
No. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, because I mean, I think in those advertisements, like you're mentioning, Brennan, was a lot of those TV commercials teased out the huge fight, like the big thing that was foreshadowing the actual events of the campaign, which was odd for them to do in TV commercials. But yeah, I mean, I thought, like you said, especially when you saw that and kind of picked up on it a little bit, and then when you actually started playing and figuring that out more, it sounded like it was gonna be some huge thing, and you were kind of get all worked up for it, and then you get to it, and it's mediocre at best.
Yeah, they did.
Well,
go ahead, Brandon.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna kind of talk about different points. They did leave, however, the ability to buy houses and properties, and you would still collect passive income.
Yeah,
as you would in Fable 2.
I think the unique thing they did on that front, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, was the map scheme was so very dry in Fable 2, obviously, because, it wasn't meant to be something spectacular. The map that you could pull up in Fable 3 was very detailed due to the location you were in, especially so you can manage your properties through the map system instead of running into the town to physically do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of quality of life upgrades that made that easier.
And then this one, they actually introduced you had to repair your furniture and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, because depending on if you're renting them out, I think it was more so towards the houses. If you're renting them out, the quality of the house, essentially like the walls and whatnot.
Yeah, you could make more money if it was a nicer place.
Yeah, you could, because you could buy them worn down. Essentially, you could buy a house that's been, just old or whatever, and you could throw some money into it to bring it to its peak state. But as people live in it, it deteriorates, and you have to throw more money into it to keep its quality up, so you get that top dollar out of it.
Yeah, and they also kept, which is, I guess, at least its consistency is they kept the interactions with NPCs. You can get married, you can have children. There's divorce and ending of relationships, so they didn't change any of that, which is kind of nice.
The addition that I noticed, I mean, was the personal. I think it was actually for any NPC. You could actually hold their hands and drag them along everywhere with you.
You're probably right. I don't remember, to be honest.
You could. I mean, because the first time you experience it, you might this might remind you of it. Is the first time you start the game and you're in the Fairfax Gardens with your girlfriend or whatever.
Right.
Remember, you can grab her hand and pull her with you through the gardens.
Okay. Yep.
Yep. And you could do that with other NPCs, I believe, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you had a high enough connection with them, then you could grab them, touch them. Yeah, that whole touch mechanic thing.
Yeah. And they also kept the dog. You still
They
get a dog in
did,
this
yeah.
one. It's kind of still the same. It doesn't seem like they really changed much. It help you find treasure. This one would warn you if there was enemies ahead. I don't remember if in Fable 2 he would do that.
They didn't really add much upgrades. I mean, it was still very straight to the point to what the dog did in the second one. I mean, obviously, they had the little additions to things, but
Right.
I don't think there was anything new and spectacular that they added mechanic-wise to the dog. I mean,
Right.
that I can recall.
Yeah, not that I recall either.
But that was the coolest thing. I mean, for me, the dog thing was a very big thing. Because I'm a dog lover in real life. Like, I'm all about dogs. And, the experience of Fable 2 with your companion was, one of the most, best experiences for me in the game. Was just, always have your consistent companion. And seeing that come back in Fable 3 was amazing. Because, that scene starts, you see that you have your dog under the covers with you, and you're like, oh, cool, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not seeing anything about multiplayer. Do you guys remember?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. I think you could join your friend.
I don't know why they would remove it.
Gosh, I mean, this being like my second favorite game series, you can throw rocks and dog shit at me for not remembering that, but I really don't remember. I don't remember if you could actually join your friends' worlds as a character or a preset character. As your character or a preset character.
I'm kind of looking it up right now, and I don't see anything talking about if there was multiplayer. It says it was multiplayer, but I'm not seeing exactly what it was.
No, I think this is when they changed it, because the second one you were tethered together, and then in 3 you could actually
Yes, there was. You're right.
Worlds.
Yep.
And then you could. I think you could even join as your own character.
You could join as your own character, and you could actually leave that circle. That was that little how you can't go so far away from your the host of the game.
You weren't tethered anymore.
Yeah.
You could finally move around.
And then in this one,
that is right.
Like the last one had the gargoyles and the door.
Oh man, I can't believe we didn't talk about that.
I know, I completely
Yes, gosh darn it. I mean, like what people don't know is, I mean, if anybody who hasn't played Fable 2, one of the most hilarious things about exploring as you're running across the maps and where it has you go is you would be just kind of out and about trotting along, and all of a sudden you hear some like rude, absurd little little voice, and it would just start saying obscure things to you, and you'd be like, what is that? And you kind of be looking around, and it was gargoyles, and they were essentially placed up in high points, kind of like because they're gargoyle statues. And then, like you were mentioning, like in Fable, the point of them in Fable 2 was you would shoot them and destroy them, and it would and have an end result if you found them all of going into like this special temple where they originate from, and getting a reward out of it. And in Fable 3, they introduced that aspect, but did gnomes, like garden gnomes.
Yep.
And they did the same thing, which, they insult you because you could just be walking along and hear that little piercing, annoying voice just start saying shit at you, and you kind of be looking like, what the hell? Yeah, those were cool. Those were actually pretty hilarious.
It was Fable 3 that they introduced the werewolves, right?
Valverines.
The Valverines.
Yep. And they had...
No, they were in Fable 2. They were...
Yeah, they were before.
Yeah, they were located in... was it Wraith's Marsh? No. They were in Wraith's Marsh, but they were also on another road towards... I forget where you were going, but they were in Fable 2 for sure.
Yeah. Those things were such a pain in the ass to fight.
it was Fable 3 where they kind of made them, they brought them, they weren't in set areas anymore. So
Yeah.
they could be running amok. After you
Yep.
get to a certain, checkpoint or progression through the game, it would kind of,
Right.
because you would run into them eventually, and that would essentially unlock their ability to be in
Right.
other places. So you could be in
Right.
Bowerstone Lake and just kind of venturing around, seeing people, because Bowerstone Lake in Fable 3 actually has settlements, little houses everywhere.
Yeah.
And you could run into Balverines attacking the populace
Yep.
and killing them. And so you'd have to save people.
Yeah. And then so after Fable 3, we had what Fable Heroes and Fable Legends were just kind of like little mini games or
No, they were full-fledged games.
Mhm.
Fable Heroes was like a 2D side-scrolling action beat 'em up
yeah.
platformer thing
Yeah.
where it was all done in like this like homemade puppetry doll artwork thing.
Oh, the hero. It was based off the
Um,
hero dolls, right? That were in Fable 2?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you pick some of the various characters from Fable and you just run around and hit stuff.
Right.
It
Mind
was
you,
fine. It was
mind you, not to interrupt you, but like that reminds me of that hero doll system. That is, I've never been an achievement hunter, never in my life. I tried to be, because Brenden, you just made it look so fun back in the day. So I tried, I really did. And Fable 2 is the only game I almost got every damn achievement for, except for that hero doll achievement, because that hero doll achievement required you that because each game that people owned actually in real life, each Fable 2 copy, your world would hold a certain Fable doll, and you would have to exchange them with other players
Yeah.
to kind of emulate online connections with people.
Yeah.
And I could never get that achievement, and I'm still sour about it till this day.
Yeah, I never after Fable 3, I really didn't play anything else that had come out for it. My
Yeah.
interest in games kind of shifted. Was it Fable 3 came out in 2010, so 2011 Skyrim came out. So I kind of shifted my focus on what I was playing.
A lot of generational,
Mhm.
cemented popular games started
Yep.
hitting the market and changing
Yep.
the name of the game.
Absolutely.
well. I mean, that was they also tried to take again Fable down this weird road in
Yeah.
this weird direction, and like it's not what people wanted out of Fable,
Yeah.
and I mean it's what led to the downfall of it.
Well, yeah, I
Is
don't.
after Fable 3 in 2010, there is no other mainline Fable game. I mean that
Yeah.
remaster we talked about of the first one came out in 2014,
Which
which was cool, but
it's only a
then
remaster.
I mean, because what
yeah,
they did with Fable, I mean, is because they had the Kinect, the Xbox Kinect, which was,
Mhm.
good in its own right, right? But it wasn't really like solid and groundbreaking because obviously it came out when the Nintendo Wii was, smashing and, so
I mean
popular. But I
it
mean,
was it it was groundbreaking
Mhm.
because you didn't need a controller and in theory it tracked your movements. The problem was is that it didn't entirely work.
they didn't, yeah, it didn't work correctly because I remember they had
It's
aspects and like specifically like you were mentioning Skyrim, Tim, is like where you
Yeah.
could say shouts and your
Yep.
Kinect would pick it up and your character would do it in the game. So it had unique things and it was. I mean, I get why maybe Lionhead Studios tried to create like some Fable content for it, and
Mhm.
they went down, like Brennan said, they went down a weird path with what they were trying to do with
Yep.
Fable. I mean,
well, yeah, so they made Fable Heroes, and then they made Fable the Journey, which was exclusively on the Kinect,
Yeah.
and was also not really a Fable game. Like it was not a fully fledged RPG. It was almost like this weird on-rails shooter where you would
Mhm.
like shoot magic out of
it
your
was like a
hands.
arcade uh, thing that
Right.
you'd play at Peter Piper Pizza or arcade center or whatnot.
Okay.
And it was I mean yeah, it was very much like this on-rails kind of
Mhm.
experience, and I mean it had a story and stuff, and for what it was actually pretty solid and pretty good. But like again, that's not Fable.
Right.
Like that's not what people wanted to play with Fable.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I imagine that they were forced to do that. Probably like, hey, we needed exclusive stuff for the Connect. Hey, Lionhead, you guys want to make something? And then we're
Right.
probably like, well, we have to because you pay our paychecks.
Yep.
So, I mean that, and also the main studio head of Lionhead was Peter Molyneux, and he's, well, to be perfectly honest with it, he's a dipshit and a swine. And
Yeah. He's the reason why the series plummeted.
Yep.
well, he's notorious for being a snake oil salesman, basically. He makes promises that he knows he can't deliver and that he knows won't deliver, but he makes them anyway to try and sell people on the idea, and then they don't come to fruition. And then when it doesn't happen, he just kind of is like, oh, whatever. It's not that big of a deal, even though it kind of is, because that's not what we were promised.
Right.
It is honestly, I mean, I won't go into depth about it here,
Yeah.
but it's basically most of his career is doing that,
Okay.
and that's not even a joke.
Okay.
That's so sad. I mean,
Yeah.
that seeing Fable plummet like that actually kind of hurt a little bit because that
Well,
series was near and dear to me for sure.
We do have a shot at redemption with what the internet is calling Fable 4.
Oh gosh,
But before we dive into Fable 4, let's go through the reviews of Fable 1, 2, and 3. So IGN gave Fable 1 a 9.3 out of 10. What do you guys think?
was deserved. I think.
Way too high.
I think it was absolutely astonishing.
Way too high.
Way too-
I would probably go. I mean, I'd probably give it maybe like an 8.5 or something like that. But 9.3 is way too
Yeah,
I'll
high.
give it a
That's
10.
way too high.
Eat it.
For Fable 1, I would agree with you there. I think an 8 to an 8.5 would be a more appropriate.
Yeah,
rank
that I
for
would
it.
agree with.
And then Fable 2 got an, which is actually kind of surprising, got an 8 out of 8 or 8.8 out of 10 for IGN.
That was, I mean, Fable 2, okay, I could stretch on Fable 1 because, I didn't really experience it when it first came out. But Fable 2, I mean, I will fight somebody. That was a solid 9 or a 10 for me. That
I don't
game
know.
was
I don't know
fun.
10. I would give it at least like a 9.2 to a 9.4.
I mean, I would go probably between the 8.5 and the 9
It's
because that game had a lot of slowdown and technical issues, and I mean, while it really refined and really helped nail down what the Fable formula,
right.
what most people would know the Fable formula as today.
Yeah.
I mean, it still definitely had its problems, and it still didn't pick up enough in certain areas that it should have. Like the combat's still kind of samey.
Yeah. The combat I think was the same throughout the entire game, the entire
Yeah,
series.
I mean they never really
But
improved on it.
Fable 2 brought so much more to the table than Fable 1 did.
That's true. I'm not arguing that.
And to rate Fable 1 higher, which was kind of a unique game for its time back then, I still think Fable 2, in my opinion, and I think Josh, you would at least you, Josh, would agree with this, is Fable 2 is by far the best game in that series, and so it should have the higher rating of all the games.
I mean, I could be my argument could be very void because it was the first Fable I ever played, but I got to play Fable Anniversary. So I got to play the first one.
Yeah.
So I got to experience it, but I didn't get to experience it when it first came out. But since Fable 2 is, obviously the first time I got introduced to the series, after playing Fable 1 finally, and Fable 2 is just, it's really good. Yep. It's definitely way better than Fable 1 for sure. But I don't know. It changed my experience for gaming. I mean, yeah.
I mean, again, it's your personal rating.
Yeah.
You can rate it whatever the hell you want to.
Josh, you could give it a 12.
Oh, I mean, like, yeah, but still.
Yeah.
I'm going to, our ratings and stuff will be held accountable, and I definitely think it was at least 9 to 10 for sure because I loved the shit out of that game.
Right. And then Fable 3, 8.5 out of 10.
I think that's more or less accurate.
See, I feel like that's a little ambitious.
I give it a 7. I know, like, you'd be like, what? I thought you loved Fable, but I don't know. I definitely had issues with Fable 3. I mean, I played it a lot, obviously, but I had issues with it.
Like I said, I haven't played it in years, but I don't think it really brought anything new to the series or to the table. It was...
I mean, the only thing new that it really brought was the whole storyline part where you became king and then you had to make all those decisions about being the ruler of Albion.
But is that
Oh
enough to
yeah.
give it an
And
8.5?
I mean, I think the 8.5 is fair. I would probably go a little lower than that,
Mm-hmm.
but like I think the 8.5 is reasonable because the game. I mean, it worked. It did more or less what every Fable game should have done.
Right.
Um, it had a lot of those same aspects of Fable 2 and just,
It did.
sprinkled some new stuff on. And it came out 2 years later.
Right.
Like it wasn't even that long of a time gap for them to make something crazy
Right.
new.
Yeah.
And
I
technology
mean,
changes
like,
from 2008 to 2010 really wasn't extravagant.
well,
Basically nothing.
yeah, well, because I mean, like, even the art style for it kind of changed. At least the look of the people. They try to normalize it a little bit. The only callback you kind of get to like that old Popeye look that I was talking about earlier is your your teacher, one of the original guards, from Fable Two, who was your father's, which was your hero. Your hero in Fable Two, your character's father's like right hand man. He had the build of those old characters, but then all the new people were more humanized into actual representation of us in real life, which was bizarre that they did that. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe. I don't know why they would kind of try to do that.
So I'd give it 7.5. I'd take it a whole point down. But
I'd take a 7, hard 7.
so now this is probably the part of the episode that I've been like really looking forward to. Fable 4 is what
Yeah.
the internet is
Well,
calling it.
we don't know if it's
That-
we don't know if it's Fable 4.
We
I'm
don't
that's,
know.
That's just what I've
Yeah.
seen it is on the internet.
It's the
Fable 4.
basic name, I guess you
It's
could call it.
Well, I think they're calling it Fable 4 just to differentiate it, but
Yes.
I think its official title right now is just Fable.
So-
So we don't know if it's a
Yeah.
reboot, a remake,
Right.
if we're scrapping the whole thing and starting over. We don't.
We definitely don't know much
We have
about
like
it.
a 30-second teaser, and that's
Right.
about it.
Yeah,
So
because
Brenden-
it was because everybody experienced 2020 for what it was. No games, boring, crappy, shit that went on. But when E3 hit, and they did the whole digital online presentation, I remember about shitting myself when they
Yeah.
ended the Xbox E3 stream with that trailer for Fable.
Yep.
And I was like, oh yes, you know what I mean? Like I was like, gosh, I mean, I feel like, a lot of game series end after the third and whatnot, but like, I guess more so now. I feel like I've been getting spoiled with so many sequels to games that I was always hoping that we would get one for Fable.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
especially after Fable Legends, right? Because
Yeah.
that was,
So
Yeah, Fable Legends was its own disaster.
So, Brenden, your speculations or your hope for Fable?
I mean, I have some high hopes. It's being made by Playground Games, which are the guys who, funnily enough, since we talked about it earlier,
Yep.
they make Forza Horizon.
Yep.
So, like, they know how to make a game look good, and
Yes.
they definitely understand a giant open world.
Yes.
Um, I think it also helps a bit that they are British, like Lionhead was.
Yeah.
yeah.
So they can lean into that sense of humor and that,
Yep.
cultural styling and all that stuff.
It'll be interesting to see how their physics work now as a person rather than a vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, because when Forza came out, just the past 3 days ago, I the Twitterverse lit up with so many people, saying Fable is in good hands, and I strongly kind of feel that. I mean, like like Brenden was saying, is like they're British, they understand open world. I mean, look at what they do with just the beauty of it, and like just could you imagine, oh
Yep.
whew.
I mean, I definitely have faith that the game will look good.
Oh,
It's running.
absolutely.
It's going to run in the same engine as Forza Horizon 5.
Yep.
It's running that Forza Tech engine.
Yeah,
So
I mean, but
It's gonna be a beautiful game.
it is their first attempt at this,
Yep.
story oriented RPG. So
yeah, that's
that's the other thing.
that's the thing is I think this is just this will be really the first time that they're doing something else outside of Forza.
Yeah.
Not that that's like
Bad.
to knock them.
Yeah.
How dare they try new things, those bastards.
How dare they try to
Um,
expand?
So, but I mean, that's again, that's not it's not a bad thing or a good thing.
Mhm.
It is just a thing. It is what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And so we'll see if they they can handle it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it is in good hands.
Yes,
Yeah.
it absolutely is.
As long as they are given the appropriate time to make it and resources and stuff, I think it's in good hands. And as long as they can bring back more or less the heart of Fable, that kind of
Was forgotten.
lighthearted, goofy, easy RPG,
Yep.
then I think that's all they really need to do. Like, it doesn't need to reinvent the wheel.
No.
It doesn't need to,
No. Yeah.
have all these crazier new aspects or,
Right.
I mean,
add like shitloads of explosions or some other stuff like that. Like, it just needs to be that kind of simple, easy fantasy RPG. And
yeah. That's all you could hope for. That's all I could hope for, honestly. I mean, because what kind of boosts my hopes slightly was that trailer was actually pretty comical.
Yeah.
And Tim, like we were talking about, is like our speculations for the game. You hear that the commentator,
It's
that
the-
guy who just it's
like
the Guildmaster from Fable
it's
1.
Maze. It's the Guildmaster
Yes.
from Fable
Yes,
1.
and that trailer alone kind of gave me more hopes to like them actually doing it justice, because that trailer was decent.
Right.
It was pretty good. It was hilarious. They had that little fairy get eat by a frog. I mean, yeah.
So
I have high hopes.
I initially thought that maybe we were getting another remaster of Fable, and they were just going to kind of maybe more of a remake, and they would add more things into it. I've since changed my opinion. I almost think this is going to be like a Fable, maybe like a prequel to the Fable series. Just hearing his voice, he's obviously going to be tied into it somehow. I think this might be like maybe the beginning of the Heroes, or a story about the heroes prior to Fable 1.
Yeah, it could be the Age of Heroes, which is before the Heroes Guild.
Yep. Okay, and so we'll kind of start wrapping this up. Brenden, what games are you playing this week?
Forza Horizon 5, and somewhat on the back burner still my second playthrough of Persona 5 Royal, but mostly Forza.
Okay.
Vroom vroom.
Vroom vroom. Josh? Okay, guess Josh isn't there.
I'm here. Sorry,
left
I
us.
had something to take care of there for a sec. I've been playing
What
Forza
games are you playing?
Horizon 5, obviously.
Yep.
But what do you call it? Forza Horizon 5, dabbled in with some San Andreas, and that's it. Really, more Forza Horizon 5 with that. It's been pretty addicting, I'd say.
And then I've been Forza Horizon 5, of course. We got to stay true. I'm going to dabble a little bit here and there with San Andreas. I'm not going to divulge too deeply into that one. I still got Mass Effect going. That's kind of my main priority. Forza and Grand Theft Auto are going to be kind of like when I want to take a break, or I want something new and different for a little bit. And then, of course, I'm still getting beat the hell up by Warzone. I don't know why we still play this fucking game.
Yeah. God.
You could just stop.
We played
it's really
it
not
last
that
night,
hard.
and it was such a pain in the ass.
Hey, we got 2 wins.
Yeah, on Rebirth, and then we tried playing Verdansk, and that was a shit show.
We'll have to get into Warzone at a different episode, but Verdansk is just, it's overused.
It's over. Yeah, it's drawn out, and
yes. So anyways, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. You catch us YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can leave us messages, comments, questions. Don't be afraid to kind of hesitate. Reach out to us. All our link trees are in like all the descriptions, all the bios, so you can check us out anywhere. The Twitter handle is CO Gaming Podcast. And thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks. Later, guys.
Thanks. Have a good one.